Do you ever feel like someone's watching you, following you, or stalking you even, but you can't quite figure out how to prove it? Suspecting someone is stalking you is terrifying, I know, but proving it in a way that stands up in court is a whole different challenge, to be sure. In this video, I will cover what evidence a private investigator needs to collect to build an irrefutable case against a stalker. Now, one of the biggest reasons we have been hired regarding potential stalking cases is when our client suspects someone or some group of people are following them. The first questions I always ask are, why do you think you are being followed? What evidence have you gathered so far to document that you're being followed? And what reason or reasons do you think they're following you? Asking these types of questions will help you in several different ways. The first thing you need to do, though, is not just ask the questions, but turn on your investigative hearing aid. You know, the keeping silent and letting the other person talk hearing aid. You need to be able to completely understand and visualize in your mind what they are seeing that makes them suspicious. So before we go into the how do you investigate the stalking allegations, let's discuss each of these questions in a little more detail and how it benefits you. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. The first question I always ask is, why do you think you're being followed? This is usually followed then with a long pause, letting them gather their thoughts, gather their composure, and figure out how they're going to answer the question. Based on my experience from dealing with these types of cases over the past 2 decades, I have seen some very telling and common details in how clients respond to these questions. Most of the time, the client starts off with something like this. Well, it's hard to explain, but every time I go somewhere, I see the same people. It's not always the same person. There are multiple people, and I see them at different times and different places. Another common thing I often hear before they ever tell me why they are suspicious is this. This is going to sound crazy, but. Or, everyone thinks I'm crazy when I tell them what's going on, but. These are some key phrases to listen for. Now, just because they say everyone thinks that they are crazy, well, it doesn't mean that they are crazy. But it gives you insight to help you formulate follow-up questions for later in the discussion. And we will discuss some follow-up questions here in just a moment too. Make sure while they are talking, you are not only listening, but you are taking notes as well. Based on my experience, many times there will be pauses between statements. You should use those pauses for 2 things. One, it creates white space, as I call it, in the conversation to let them gather their thoughts, and it allows you a brief moment to jot down some notes. What will usually happen when you utilize this white space technique is the client will think a little more, then go into more details on their own. Now, if they don't continue, don't make it weird. Don't wait too long. Too much white space can turn into an awkward moment. So after 3 or 4 or maybe 5 seconds, then ask the next question. Not the follow-up questions. Not yet. We will get to those in a moment. The next question should be, what evidence have you gathered up to this point to prove someone is stalking you? Now, this question can have many different answers, but the most common is usually something to the effect of, I haven't. Then they may go into details of things that happen when they try to document the stalking. Or they say, I haven't tried to document anything, I just see them all the time. The way they answer this is highly valuable because it lets you know if they have started any counter surveillance themselves. And if the client has already started conducting some sort of counter surveillance, that isn't a bad thing, but it is something you need to know about, and you need to know how successful or not successful it has been. Not to mention, you will want to later ask to see the results of their efforts, such as pictures, videos, and things like that. But wait, it's not time yet to start asking those follow-up questions. Not yet. We will get into those in a moment when I tell you why you need to wait to ask follow-ups. The third question I always ask is, what reason or reasons do they think they may be followed? This question, tied in with how they answer the previous questions, can be very telling, so listen closely. Oftentimes, the client simply doesn't know why. Oftentimes, they tell me just that. I don't know why. There is nothing special about me. Then they may go into details about their lives, what they do, where they work, and other things. But sometimes they will give more informative details of their suspicions, like, I'm going through a very contentious divorce, or my ex from 10 years ago suddenly contacted me and seems to know information about me. Now, brace yourself. You may also get some very odd answers to this question. Answers about their personal life you may not want to hear. They may discuss some rather personal details with you. And this is key to understand when you are even thinking about taking on these types of cases. For me, if it gets weird, if it gets dicey, I bail out at this point. I don't want to hear about all of their exes, all of their partners, all of their drug usage, anything like that. I basically draw the line on what type of cases I will take and what type I won't. Now, because they live their lives a certain way doesn't mean they aren't being stalked, but it does mean the scope of the job is beyond what I want to deal with. This is one of the big reasons you need to wait to ask follow-up questions, but not the biggest reason. The biggest reason you want to wait to ask follow-ups is to ensure you have enough information to formulate follow-up questions. That will help you gain more needed information. Make sure when you ask those follow-up questions, they are, like with any interview, open-ended questions. You know, the questions that can't be answered with a simple yes or no. Some quick follow-up questions you might ask are these. Can you describe a specific moment or detail that made you realize this wasn't just coincidence? This follow-up helps pinpoint if suspicion is based on concrete events or just vague feelings. Another follow-up to ask might be, have you tried to document anything beyond what you've already shared with me, like photos, videos, audio recordings, or have you had any direct communications or contact with them? This follow-up avoids rehashing their initial answer but allows them to focus on actionable evidence they might have overlooked. And then asking, is there a specific event, relationship, or change in your life that you believe triggered all of this? This will allow you to identify concrete triggers without diving into sensitive personal details. Now, of course, if they've already given you answers to these questions, then there is no need to ask them again. And as with all interviews, you should have some follow-up questions of your own based on how they answered your initial 3 questions. Now, before we go into the how-tos regarding counter-surveillance, here are 2 major things that I'm looking out for during any initial conversation with the client. Are there signs of mental instability and or drug use, be it legal or not? From my experience, the vast majority of calls I get about stalking are from individuals that fall into these 2 potential categories. Again, that doesn't diminish the perceived or real threats that may be involved. But I learned a long time ago, I don't have to take every case that comes to me, and some are ones that are best to not take. And ones that may fall into these categories are ones that I definitely do not take due to the complications that may arise. Now you have decided to take on the case. You put together the contract and you got it signed. You got a retainer in place. You do take retainers, right? And you are ready to start the job. What do you do now? You first want to make sure your client knows that counter surveillance cases can take a long time. I mean, a real long time to document everything, identify everyone, and formulate a diagnosis of what is happening. And time is money. As well, counter surveillance costs are typically higher than regular surveillance costs due to the risks involved and nature of the investigation. Now, oftentimes the client wants to know what they can do themselves if the cost is too high, and I will usually give them some personal countermeasure steps that they can take to tell if it's real, to gather some evidence themselves, and to help themselves avoid being surveilled, and I will go over those tips here in a moment too. Now, you have to keep this in mind. Like all investigations, not all counter surveillance cases are the same. In fact, when it comes to counter surveillance, the operation in itself can vary widely depending on all of the details involved. If for any reason I feel there is a high risk of conflict, I will not take the case unless we can utilize 2 or sometimes 3 investigators. And of course, this doubles or triples the client's cost. The first thing to do, as with all investigations, is the planning. You need to work with the client closely on this part. You need to know their schedule inside and out, when they plan to do activities, when they plan to go places, but most importantly, when and where is it most likely that stalking will happen. Do they think they're always followed when they take the kids to school, but not other times? Do they think they're being stalked when they go to the gym, the grocery store, or anywhere else? Identifying the best times to work the counter surveillance is key, just like if you were working a regular surveillance job. If the client is only worried about it happening when they go out for drinks with their friends on Friday nights, well, it doesn't make sense to be doing round-the-clock surveillance Monday through Wednesday, does it? When you go out to do the counter surveillance, it is key to know exactly when the client will be leaving, where they will be going, and what vehicle they will be driving. As well, who will be with them, how long they anticipate to be gone, along with any other details, and most importantly, where do they think they will see the people following them. Now, you need to start much earlier than they will be leaving. In regular surveillance jobs, you may start an hour before anticipated activity, but in counter surveillance, you need to be there even earlier. I usually start 2 to 3 hours before to ensure I can get set up and be prepared, but more importantly, so I can be there before the stalker gets there. You see, the person doing the following probably plans to be there early too. They probably know the routines, the routes, and have much more intel, so they will want to set up either at the house or en route somewhere early too. When I go out, I treat it just like a surveillance. I want to be as covert as possible. Well, unless the operation is meant to be overt, and we'll discuss that here in another moment. When I arrive, I make a note of all vehicles present in the neighborhood. Usually, I gather video of every single video. This is where having good dash cams running comes in handy. I prefer to have one facing front, one facing the rear, and one on each side in my rear windows to ensure I get video of everything. If you want to see what dash cams I use, as well as all my other equipment, then check out my website, howtobeapi.com, after this video. Here is a big difference between surveillance and counter surveillance. When the client goes active, do not start the follow immediately. If you do a lot of surveillance, this seems counterintuitive, but you want to sit back, you want to be watching everything, you want to see if anyone else starts to follow the client. I also usually have the client do something that is atypical after they leave to help me buy some time to catch up to them. That might be stopping somewhere and getting a cup of coffee or a breakfast sandwich or whatever. The key thing here is that it allows me to catch up with them and allows me to observe if anyone is following or watching them. If this activity is not normal for the client to do, it may make the stalker show signs of interest in the behavior, like parking closer or taking video or some other suspicious activities. I will usually park at a distance from wherever the client will be going, and I videotape everything. But the big difference here from regular surveillance is that I am not zoomed all the way in on the client. Rather, I am getting a wide shot of the entire area and zooming in on any potential suspicious individuals or vehicles. Then when the client is done with all of their activities for the day, I will oftentimes go to the house ahead of the client so I can be set up and see if anyone comes in after they're home. As you can see, all of this would be much easier with 2 investigators. You can have one stationed at or near the first stop, then when the client arrives, the investigator following the client goes to the second stop, thus utilizing the leapfrog technique to ensure the integrity of the investigation. One big thing I try to always avoid on counter surveillance cases is direct contact with the client during the counter surveillance. It is way too easy for them to send you off on a wild goose chase if they think they saw someone staring at them or doing something else suspicious. Then you are off script, off beat, and it is hard to regain control. I always have everything fully scripted, where we are going, what the client will do, tell them to not deviate even if they suddenly remember other things they need to do, save those for another day. This allows us to do our job in the most effective way possible. When the day is done, the client then sends me a list of suspicious things they saw, and we can then do follow-up investigations on that based off of our video and intel. Now, here are tricky things that I often have the clients do, and these are things anyone can do if they think they're being followed. First off, I tell them to document anything suspicious they see, but the key is to do this without alerting the suspicious people. If they can get license plates discreetly, safely, then do so. If they can grab some video, again, safely and discreetly, then do so. They can even use those dash cams on their vehicle as long as they are not highly visible. I will also have them take a pre-planned SDR or surveillance detection route. This might include suddenly driving slower than normal. Doing this allows us to see if someone is following back, trying to follow them at a distance. Now, for this to work, you need to drive for a while at this reduced speed, as it is just normal for most traffic to automatically slow down when one car slows down for a short period of time. Then they may drive faster, not speeding, not driving dangerously, but seeing if someone then is suddenly trying to keep up. This sudden increase in speed will also usually create a gap. The primary goal here is to disrupt and identify any surveillance patterns. Another method is to pull into a random neighborhood. Now, it's not so much random since it's planned, but it will seem random to anybody following them. Then drive around the neighborhood slowly, then exit at a known exit point, oftentimes at the same place that they entered. This allows us to set up stationary surveillance as they enter and document any vehicles going in behind them, then observe any vehicles leaving after them. Here's one that is a little more risky, using choke points to gather intel. Choke points are places where you can force the person following you to go past you, like pulling behind a Walmart or some other big box store, or a dead-end street, or a street with a cul-de-sac. Now, if there is a threat of physical harm, real or potential, never do this. And if you have your client do it, make sure you are there ahead of time to document what happens. If anything goes south, if you feel endangered in any way, call 911. Now, don't call 911 just because you think someone is following you. Call if you believe that you are in imminent danger. The biggest thing of all, no matter what techniques and what tactics you use, you must document everything, and the best documentation is video and photos. And remember, you need to document these activities more than once. In fact, we recommend to have at least 3 or 4 similar activities documented for a suspicious person before taking next steps. And those next steps vary widely too. Sometimes clients will ask us to be more overt in our operations, thus letting the other person know that we know what they are doing. Now, you want to make sure you do this carefully. You want to know that you know that you know that they're following your client. If you just do this on a whim, you could end up looking like the aggressor in the situation and have the tables turned on you. We will also always have the client have an attorney involved in these cases too, even if it's just on a small retainer for advice. Then if we start gaining more evidence, we can consult with the attorney as to what steps to take next. Calling law enforcement is always an option, but if you don't have solid, provable evidence, they most likely cannot do anything except maybe step up the patrols in the neighborhood to watch for suspicious activity. Now, what other counter-surveillance techniques and tactics can you think of? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button to see more videos like this, and click the join button to learn how to become a PI Guide channel member.